So we're here with Gauta Komane. Gauta, I love your work. I love reading about everything you post on Facebook, but I'm sort of not 100% clued up with the specifics, what positions you held at various times. So, for example, before COPE, you were part of the ANC, right?
Yes, I was part of the ANC. Uh, yes, let me start. Yeah. I'm a lawyer by profession, and uh, I worked for some time in the state as a prosecutor, and but also being a member of the community-based political organizations, NGOs, civic structures in Pretoria, and when the ANC was unbanned, we young people were drafted into the ANC. Naturally, it was natural thing to do
Sorry, Gauta,
at the time.
were you ever part of the UDF?
No, no, not quite. I wouldn't say that, but I was uh, part of the organizations, the movement. Let me say the movement, the mass democratic movement, meaning uh, young activists in their street zones doing community work. So broadly, it was a mass democratic movement, but not formally uh, affiliated as such to the UDF. We're too young for the UDF. Now, take it from there. Then many of the ANC got us, we in the mass democratic movement, the loser association of democratic organizations, the federations. We were naturally grafted into the ANC. And at the time, I was a prosecutor. I am prosecutor in the north of Pretoria, in the northwest, really. And I was recruited by the office of the premier to work in the premier's office as a policy researcher and a speech writer. And at the same time, I worked as a member of the disciplinary committee of the ANC at the level of the province, and also worked in the economic transformation subcommittee. That's why my interest in policy development was kindled, and I developed a keen interest in research, in economic research specifically. And from there, I started doing consulting work for the government in community development, in integrated development planning, in the development of economic policy and projects in the Northwest and elsewhere. For 20 years, that's what I've been doing. Uh, Practically consulting for municipalities in their transformation, in the creation of political environment conducive to investment and economic development. Yes, that's my background. When the Thabo Mbeki was removed in 2008, I joined COPE. I was a founding member, and I was in charge of elections in the Northwest, election manager. I had seen the destruction of intellectualism in the ANC in the mid 2000s. As a policy researcher, as somebody who's interested in, who understood organizational
Uh,
development and
sorry,
change management.
the mid 2000s. So
Yes, sir.
that's during Thabo Mbeki's period.
Yes, during Thabo Mbeki's period,
And
yes, I could see it.
who initiated that?
Well, I could see it in the periphery. The destruction of the ANC started in the periphery, in the provinces, where the small, the petty leaders began to show tendencies towards corruption, vote buying, intimidation, and intolerance of debate. the tolerance of dissent. I could see it in the periphery. But Thabo Mbeki was a good leader of the ANC at the center. But one could see the attacks coming to him, that he was being an aloof, a leader who was not in touch with people and was aloof. He was too intellectual. He was too well-read for a movement like that, which was a developmental movement. I mean, it's a contradiction, isn't it? That the leader of the organization is an intellectual. He develops policy. He speaks for the organization. He was described as a Keynesian and Shakespearean leader, instead of being a man of the people, man of the poor. And this movement, this Zuma movement, contrasted the two. They said Zuma was pro-poor because he was unlearned. Thabo Mbeki was not pro-poor because he was too learned. How do you love that? Yes, I could see that as somebody who understood policy development and organizational development. It was a distraction written in the stars, a distraction of the ANC, destruction of the country written in the stars. You could see that. Yes. So we joined COPE. I was election manager. I developed, I was a part of the drafting of the election strategy, not election manifesto, but the election strategy, with the budgets, with the objectives, with the targets. Yeah.
Was Mbeki part of the formation of COPE?
No, Thabo Mbeki was not part of the formation of COPE. I heard J.J. Tamane say so, and he categorically said Trevor Manuel and Thabo Mbeki were behind the formation of COPE. Although there are people that were close to Thabo Mbeki that were actively involved to different degrees, like Sakima Kozoma, Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. Thabo Mbeki actually wasn't actively participating. Well, as I said, he didn't comment negatively about the formation of COPE. He didn't participate in the election campaign of the ANC in 2009. So he created space by omission for COPE to grow because he didn't oppose it in the campaigns of the ANC for elections 2009. So their guess is as good as mine, looking at the circumstances of the time.
What do you think would have happened if Thabo Mbeki did support COPE? If, for example, if he was the president of COPE in 2009?
We could have killed the ANC.
Really?
Yeah, because there was the reception of COPE was phenomenal. He could have given the nod to prominent ANC leaders to defect to COPE. A lot of people were waiting for a signal from him, whether he's pro-COPE or what, or he's behind COPE, because there were these rumors and there were these accusations from the Zuma group, Fikile Mbalula particularly, accusing Thabo Mbeki as the Dalai Lama of COPE. And quite a lot of people were expectant of such an announcement from the President Thabo Mbeki. Yes, the people were amenable towards COPE, but that kind of signal from Thabo Mbeki would have really killed the ANC or created a powerful movement, a powerful opposition party to the ANC, to the extent that things would have been different. The trajectory of South African politics would have been different because he was very popular. Remember, he had 40% of the vote at Polokwane. So 40% of the ANC delegates is a substantial number. Yeah. Especially because the anti-corruption group in the ANC that was seeing this growth, the growth of this right-wing movement, was concerned. This grouping of intellectuals in the ANC and in the media and in academia and in business, they were worried about the growth of the anti-white, ethno-nationalist, narrow Africanist movement that was growing in the ANC, which was really a corrupt movement that we have seen. And it was clearly that powerful at the time, and it grew more powerful, and more people can see now that the ANC is totally lost. Although a lot of people were doubtful, or they were in the middle, and sort of their minds not well made, their minds not really made for or against the formation of COPE. But with the passage of time, with the state capture, hindsight is the best teacher.
Yeah. Was COPE infiltrated? I mean, the common idea is that COPE was infiltrated. JJ Debane says no. I mean, they were just incompetent. What's your opinion?
Yeah, both incompetent and infiltrated. My personal experience of it on the ground, in the provincial leadership, is that there were people who were, I could call, agent provocateurs and double agents that pretended to be working for COPE, but you could see that they were looking behind their shoulder all the time. You could see that they opposed certain moves. They created confusion by having two presidents of COPE at the same time. The face of COPE, the election face of COPE was Reverend Dandala, whereas the president was Lekota. So these two centers of power caused a lot of confusion, and people latched onto that ambiguity, that dichotomy, to push an agenda that was confusing to members, confusing to potential funders, confusing to the electorate. And this instability bubbled to the surface just a few weeks before the elections. So one could see that it was orchestrated from somewhere. It was sponsored by pro-ANC elements in COPE, who were working actively for the destruction of COPE so that the ANC wouldn't lose 2009 elections or wouldn't shed too many seats to the fledgling opposition party.
And I mean, the ANC has a history of doing this. I think also, once it came to the IFP, they literally in 2000, right before 2014 election, I think it was, they created another party, the NFP.
NFP.
And a lot of people voted for the NFP because they thought it was the IFP, and it split the vote. So I mean, the ANC has a reputation of being, or at least this Zuma faction has a reputation of being very cunning. I think a lot of people underestimate how smart and devious many senior members in the ANC can be.
Yes. You know, it starts from exile. The ANC had this counter-revolutionary force in its belly. There were, and it's well recorded, there are people from 1970 who were seen to be working for Israel and the United States in an exchange program. And Chris Hani wrote about it. And very senior members of the African National Congress, Joe Modise, the chief of staff of the MK, was involved in the creation of a counter-revolutionary force, using the MK as an internal opposition to the ANC, to the leadership of O.R. Tambo. You could see that. It is well documented, and Chris Hani wrote about it. So it caused problems from 1970, 1969 up to 1985 at the Kabwe conference, where there were these kind of problems that were bubbling in the ANC. And at some point, Jacob Zuma headed the Mbokodo, the counter-insurgency unit in the ANC, which was a torture chamber for the young recruits and corruption. In fact, it was a bedrock of corruption. Now, the post-1990 ANC put a lid on this counter-revolutionary force inside of itself. But it started growing as the movement grappled with the gear macroeconomic policy. And then it used the SACP and COSATU and some elements within the ANC to oppose the macroeconomic policy as neoliberal and as anti-poor. Now, it was growing intellectually in the intellectual realm of the country and inside the ANC, and hijacking the debate on macroeconomic policy for factional reasons and for corrupt agendas. So this ethno-nationalist, corrupt, anti-Becky faction took over the ANC in 2007 and the government in 2009, and the rest is history. So they wouldn't have allowed COPE to be the hope of the anti-corruption and the historical ANC, non-racial ANC that was premised on clean government, on nation building, on reconciliation. They wouldn't allow that, because that would have exposed the corrupt ANC for what it was or for what it is. So they had to send some people that were obviously working for the regime to stop regime change by smothering the flames of the fledgling COPE. By buying members, some of them went back to members of parliament of COPE, went back to the ANC, and they are as corrupt as ever. Leonard Matlakane, the chairperson of PRASA, is one of those people, and a number of them in the provinces who went back to the ANC and were given top positions in the ANC. And you wouldn't believe they have a background of COPE, and they're as corrupt as ever.
And you have current members of COPE in Johannesburg and Tshwane who clearly are in the pockets of the ANC. I mean, the speaker in Tshwane, I mean, basically the ANC owns this. I mean, it seems like, I don't want to get sued, but I mean, it definitely seems like I don't see any irrational behavior there.
No, the COPE councillors in Tshwane and Johannesburg they don't behave like the original COPE members. These are their behavior is at variance with the founding values of COPE. I think Terrell Gauta and Bloom have lost control of COPE and has allowed charlatans to come into COPE and take positions in the name of COPE. The kind of people that I see, the Speaker of Johannesburg, the ill-fated mayor of Tshwane, those are totally alien to the values and the kind of principles that we espoused when we formed COPE. So COPE is non-existent intellectually, morally, ethically, and it is totally in disarray. It's now a vehicle for self-enrichment for opportunists.
Do you think Lakota has just given up? Because it seems like with his attitude, he doesn't care anymore. I mean, it looks like he's just given up.
Yeah, so he has given up. It's embarrassing. The center cannot hold. The head is sick. It is too much for him. It is too much for one man or a couple. Too much for one man and too much for a couple of men. I know he's a kind man. I know he's a good. He's committed to a transformation of South Africa, to clean government. I know quite a number of the national leaders who are, but there are minority, and the horse has bolted. Not much can be done about it. There is no groundswell of people who are looking to transform COPE into a formidable opponent and agent of clean government.
Gauta,
So it's lost.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that.